It was supposed to be a safe haven, a place where abandoned children would be cared for by the Catholic Church. But boys at St Mary's Orphanage at Tudhoe in County Durham say they were beaten and abused by staff, including nuns. For the first time, many of them have now shared their horrific stories with BBC T's Mike Parr.
Brian Roy has got a story to tell of 13 years of terror.
It was guilt, punishment, fear and humiliation. That's what we lived on.
Brian's nightmare began at St Mary's Children's Home in Tudhoe. It was run by the Catholic Church and looked after boys aged up to 16. Brian arrived there when he was 3 in 1949. The physical and mental abuse began almost immediately.
And we decided to jump onto the rocking horse and have some fun. From the corner of my eye I could sense somebody was coming in the room, a man. And he came up to me and he came up to my pal and he came up to me and my pal and he took a hold of us by the scruff of the neck, the pair of us, and dragged us off the rocking horse out into the playground and towards this building which we knew was the boiler house. And he opened one of the boiler doors and picked me up again by the scruff of the neck and the back of the trousers and went as if he was going to throw us into the boiler. And then shut the door, dragged us back up the steps, back across to the playroom and just dumped us back into the baby's playroom as if nothing had ever happened.
Some of the staff were kind to the boys, but Brian says others, including the nuns, seemed to take pleasure in meting out punishment. Waxing the floor with rags was a particular torture.
This female worker would use a thing called a bumper to take most of the wax off. And a bumper was a big block of hardwood with a very long handle attached to the hardwood. And if you weren't doing that fast enough and efficient enough, she would let go of this bumper, which became a missile. And she would aim it at you and completely flatten you, just knock you down.
Was there any sexual abuse?
Yes, there was. But it's not something I can talk about. No, not at this moment in time anyway. That's just too much for me.
Hello, Brian. Today, Brian is about to meet another former homeboy. Peter Murphy has travelled from Cambridge.
Hello.
Good to meet you.
And you.
How are you?
He's already heard an interview I did with Brian on my radio show.
Wow.
I've gone from being okay to do it to having lots of butterflies. I seem to remember as a black lad, and something had obviously gone wrong, and we were encouraged to sort of slap him round a bit, if you want to put it that way.
Beat each other up.
Yeah, till he sort of started crying or felt really upset. And then a few days later, that would be somebody else's turn to do that.
That's right.
And then a few days later, it would be my turn.
Peter stayed at St Mary's 3 times. He believes he buried his memories of abuse to survive.
I have a couple of scars on my back, and I have no idea, no memory of those at all, where they came from. It's, I remember I would have been in my early mid-teens, I suppose. I was at home, and she said to me, "Where did you get those scars from?" And I said, "Well, I have no idea."
It's only recently he's told me about the awful cruelties, getting shut in a room by himself when he was just a little boy and being left to scream and cry all night. It just makes me cry thinking about it. I find it just so distressing.
I suppose I've nobody to talk to. I suppose I was fortunate to talk to Helen. Sorry.
St Mary's ran for more than 6 decades before being torn down in 1968. Brian left when he was 16.
But I was in an empty place. I mean, I really was. And so I just sat there very calmly and decided, well, this world's not meant for me, and I'm certainly not meant for it. And just sat underneath a tree. And just calmly thinking, oh well, you know, this is it sort of thing. So I took all the tablets and naively expected to die, but I didn't. I woke up in hospital I think it was 2 nuns and a priest standing next to my bed. They were actually berating me for possibly giving St Mary's Orphanage a very bad name. And furthermore, they reminded me very strongly and in very clear language that it was a sin. It was a mortal sin to commit suicide.
Brian's brothers, John and Fred, were also at the home. Both committed suicide. This is the Daleside Arms in Croxdale, and this is of special significance to Brian because on one occasion when he escaped from St Mary's, this is where he ended up. Brian was caught by the police and returned to St Mary's where he received more beatings. Today he's meeting another homeboy, Tony from Newcastle.
Hiya. Hello there. How are you?
The amount of times they beat me, you know, and I thought, you know, they're going to end up killing me one day. And they come close to it, but they didn't succeed. And I'm glad I'm here with you today, Brian. I know you've been through all this yourself. And I've got scars all over where I've attempted suicide. I took overdoses. I just didn't have anything to live for.
Tony recalls more cruelties from his stay at St Mary's.
I took one mouthful of this gruel and just vomited all over. And she got the ladle and proceeded to scoop the vomit off the floor into this ladle. And she pressed this chair up to the table so I couldn't move, I couldn't slide off either way. And she just got me by the head, pulled it back and poured the vomit back into my mouth, which made me vomit again.
One day near the home, a child's skull was discovered.
It was quite a small skull. The lower jaw was missing and there was a piece of bone missing off the temple here. And we were all panicking, screaming, making a commotion, and one of the nuns must have heard this, and she wrapped the skull up in a towel or a sheet or something, took the boy away with her, and you know, later on she said, "You're not allowed to talk about it anymore."
We contacted Durham Police. They say they have no record of this incident. Abuse victims complain that nobody listens. Brian says the facade of church respectability has robbed him of a voice and added a dead weight of guilt. And now he wants action from the Catholic Church.
Ideally, what we would like is from the highest person, i.e. Pope Francis himself, to have some kind of input into making an unreserved apology. And these stories are not going to go away. It's a fact of life.
Today, Brian is at BBC Tees. Paul Young from the Catholic Church has agreed to listen to his story.
I was 16 when I attempted to take my life. My brother John hung himself at the age of 16, and my brother Fred gassed himself at the age. My brother Fred gassed himself at the age of 21, and I had to identify his body, and I was then age 19. How? I mean, what a tragic, absolute waste of human life. How does all this happen? And now maybe people have a better idea. How messed up you can get when these sort of things happen and you haven't got a family behind you at that point in time. It's indescribable, really, sometimes, the pain. What we would like, amongst other things, is an apology that makes it clear to everybody that the highest of the highest are truly and deeply sorry.
And I can give you my assurance that we're going to look into this. I'll work with the statutory authorities. I'd value the opportunity to meet with you. I don't see this, hopefully, as a one-off meeting. There's an awful lot more that I think we need to go through for your benefit and to take this forward.
How did you feel it went?
Well, it was quite traumatic, obviously. I think I've got some hope that we can sort of believe that Paul Young is the right man for the job. I don't suppose for 1 minute he'll have the answers for everything, for everybody. There are some other boys who will probably not want to know anything about him. I've chosen to accept his offer of help. As to what part of the help I'll accept is another matter.
Well, thanks very much, Brian. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you as well. On behalf of the home boys, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. See you again. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Brian wrote to the Pope in June asking for a meeting. So far, there's been no reply. But Brian is not giving up.